at one this morning from Limerick, all the way from Ireland, and people are starting to grasp how important NUTRIODINE is. With its knocking out pathogens, resurrecting your mitochondria, reactivating the higher spiritual centers of your brain, detoxifying halides and xenotoxins, which are we call estrogenizing. It turns out all the estrogenizing halides are bromides, fluorides, and chlorides, and of course they're not only in pills like Prozac, which is a fluoride salt. There are bromides in bread. There are fluorides in water. There are chlorides or chloramines, which is one of the latest things they started to do. John, tell us about NUTRIODINE. What makes it so unique?
Dr. Bill, it's the method of construction. We have a process that allows us to add energy to the iodine atoms, the monatomic iodine. And, you know, you mentioned bromides, and what's funny is in Europe and I believe it's Australia and Japan, they will not allow bromides to be put into the breads or foods or drink. But
they do in America.
In the USA, they allow it. And they didn't at one time, but they do now. And
they started in the 1970s. They had since the, I think, the 50s to the 70s, they put iodine in the bread to stop gout. Yes. And what they call the Great Arc, which is the area around Minnesota, the Midwestern states. What they found is it actually started to reverse just adding normal iodine, which isn't the high-quality stuff that we make with monatomic Tesla-activated iodine. They had less incidence of cretinism, which is basically microcephaly, small brains, and babies that are born, and we call fetal hypothyroidism. It's a really serious condition.
Yes. And by putting that extra energy in, it makes the NUTRIODINE so effective, so powerful. It goes into the body and it can release that energy to defeat pathogens, all those things that are so bad for the body that just slip into our daily lives through what we breathe in, what we ingest.
All disease states are basically mitochondrial dysfunction with free radical load. Diabetics generate excess hydroperoxy, nitroperoxy, and single oxygen radicals. And when you start resurrecting the mitochondria, they come out of congestive heart failure, they get out of dementia, which is basically diabetes of the brain, or astrocytes. I call type 3 diabetes is astrocyte diabetes or insulin resistance. So they're starting to rely on the hexose monophosphate shunt, and the brain actually shuts down. You stop having action potentials. When you start resurrecting the mitochondria, your load of free radicals drops. So no matter what disease you're talking about, whether you're knocking off pathogens and you got chronic cystic fibrosis or chronic lung disease or asthma, chronic autoimmune inflammatory arthritis, as soon as you start taking NUTRIODINE, any health condition you have starts to become much more manageable by your body, and your body can go back from a state of disease to, you know, it's funny, dis-ease is a good term, dis-ease, you're no longer at ease. What you want to do is you want to start resurrecting your mitochondria, you want to kill the pathogens, and if you don't have this higher energy form of iodine, you cannot displace fluoride, chloride, and bromide. Normal iodine doesn't have high enough energy bonds in order to be able to displace these other halides. And what happened, and I call it the Bruce generation. Do you like that, Jenner? Jenner?
Yes.
The Bruce generation is caused by halides, which are xenotoxins, and they avidly attach to the estrogenic receptor 200 to 300 times more than estrogen, and they're turning boys into girls. And they may not cause them physically to completely transform, but they can rewire their brain pathways, either in utero or later on. And most of the biotoxins or halides are all xenoestrogens, which causes female cancer in women and turns boys into girls, drops sperm count, estrogenizes neural pathways, does other bad things to their brain.
It's really
interesting.
It's really depressing, and it's a shame that it's not understood in the general medical field. That
well, people ask for my treatment for depression. It's just the first thing I tell people to do. Number one is take NUTRIODINE. Number two, bio-LVR to restore B6, B12, and activated folate forms. Then we recommend anxiolytics like Calm Mind and Brain Mag to reduce the oxidative stress in the brain, because basically depression is a sign of what we call BOF, or brain on fire. And brain on fire basically is free radicals from your mitochondria, your microglial cells, which is the supporting cells of your brain, are not functioning and are generating excess free radicals. When you get exposed to a cell phone, you break down the blood-brain barrier, it's scalar, what's called entrainment of the cytochromes, so the electron transport chain, that cause your mitochondria to start firing off. It's almost like sparks firing off an engine. So when you start taking NUTRIODINE, you start to calm that system down, you start to resurrect and create new mitochondria. You cause a mitochondriogenesis, but you also get rid of old and damaged mitochondria and replace them with good, new, healthy ones. So it's really important people understand that if you don't have what we call mitochondrial hygiene and your reduction of free radicals, and it's not just taking antioxidants, it's replacing the engines that generate energy, ATP and NADH. And by the way, we just added NADH. We have it now at an amazing price, $39.95 for this very powerful biological molecule. And if you combine it with D-ribose, acetyl L-carnitine, things like our Sports Energy Light, Cognition Plus, you're going to wake your brain up. You're going to wake up your mitochondria, things like CoQ10, ubiquinol, CoQ10, and IBS Care, which is a long-acting form of carnitine. But the key thing is NUTRIODINE. And when people start taking it, they say, I can't believe this. My chronic infection's gone, my arthritis is settled, my chronic lung disease is gone, I'm using it in my CPAP machine or my Omron for my chronic lung disease, I'm using it in my HydroFloss for getting rid of NECA and periodontal cavitations, etc. It's pretty amazing. So we have testimonials all the way from India where it's being used to treat tuberculosis and pot spine, which is called TB of the spine, cancer in Africa, cerebral malaria, where the schizon parasites are in the brain, and they literally are getting the NUTRIODINE by nasal feeding tube. So they're unconscious, and we can actually pull them out of coma and kill off the pathogens. And I tell people, if you've got small bowel overgrowth, if you've got osteomyelitis of the bone, if you had radionecrosis from radiation therapy for cancer, if you had immune system collapse because you had chemo, you need to sterilize your body from the pathogens and recolonize with a living probiotic ultra. But you want to take NUTRIODINE. It's our biggest, baddest antipathogenic. And then we have our Allison Med and our Silver 100, but the biggest, most powerful one, most important nutraceutical we carry is NUTRIODINE. So, John, any other comments you want to make about NUTRIODINE? Because I can tell you, when we get calls and testimonies from people all over the world. One guy, a couple of years ago, he literally was out camping, and if you get a brown recluse spider bite, I had one patient in Georgia back in 1987, and I had to have him in the intensive care unit for 2 weeks, and he was throwing off cardiac arrhythmias. We actually resuscitated him, I think, 7 times in a week, where he literally arrested because the spider bite made him so toxic. He had one bite on his forehead. It was the size of a dinner plate, big spider, and it swelled up so much it actually covered over his eyes. And this one guy a few years ago had several hundred of these little recluse spider bites all over his body, and literally had a ton of NUTRIODINE. He slathered it all over himself, and he couldn't believe it. He got better. The doctor said they've never seen anything like it because they figured he was a goner. When he arrived in the hospital, they said, well, you're done. You're going to go into shock and die. And he didn't. He recovered completely. He didn't even have scar tissue afterwards.
Amazing. It really is. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing stuff.
So many testimonials that come in.
Well, we have spiders here in Southern California. My wife got a very bad spider bite. I don't know if it was we call it hourglass spider, or the I call the angel of death spider. It's the one with a little hourglass on it. You know which one I'm talking about?
Right. Yes, the
Black Widow. Yeah, Black Widow. They call it Black Widow, and it could be a widow or widower.
Yes.
If she got a bite and she has got a real nasty sore, slapped on the NUTRIODINE and healed it, and nothing else was doing it. And it's amazing. She had no scar tissue afterward. We have people with serious, even third-degree burns. The tissue regenerates. If you've got a sunburn, a scrape, an injury, post-operative on your wound, you want to slather on the NUTRIODINE, it's amazing how it'll heal. Today, and a couple of announcements. We will be having our big 4th of July sale worldwide. Again, starting here today is Canada Day. Thank you, all of you Canadian supporters and listeners and people that we call online customer patients and Dr. You candidates, as I say, because you're listening to the program, checking out the wellness conditions, and more materials, DVDs, material available also on our live stream channel as we provide new information. We're also going to be getting some live stream update information from my colleague, a dentist, my personal dentist, and a cosmetic biological dentist, probably the top dentist I've ever personally known, Dr. Jeffrey Curbs in Escondido. He's rated in the top 3 dentists in Southern California. That's like out of 30 million, so it's pretty amazing. And we'll be posting up his PowerPoint sometime in the next couple of weeks on all the amazing services he provides where people think that they can't get things treated, and he can. For example, instead of using gutta percha, they can use biological materials. They use a form of zirconium porcelain, which is just next down from diamond in terms of strength. I've had him already do some removal of the last few of my mercury amalgams, and he's done a tremendous job. Periodontal conditions and so on. So do check out the link to Dr. Jeffrey Curbs on the front of Nutrimedical. And Dr. Fred Graves, are you there?
Yes, sir. How are you today?
Very good. I brought you on a little early because I think this is very important. There's a lot of new Supreme Court judgments. Some of them are pretty wonky, but really they happen because they're in a legal vacuum where the public are not operating in the proper spirit and functionality of the law in terms of rules of evidence and rules of procedure. If the public were operational, whether it's pro-life movement dealing with Roe versus Wade or the materials dealing with Obamacare, where we have strange 20-plus page judgments by Roberts, I think these could easily be, brought back into court by citizen activists and put a stop to it. Because really, it's even like the comments last night when I watched Fox News from Mr. Christie, who's trying to run for president. He's the governor of New Jersey. I guess they have 9 million plus people there in the state of New Jersey. That he said, well, I have to uphold the letter of the law. Well, whatever the law is, if you have activist judges, we need to bring them back to the rules of what it is to be a Supreme Court justice and what the legislative branch and the executive branch and the judicial branches of government are operationally. And your principles, basically, whether they're used in a private case of a lawsuit or copyright or a contract, whatever, they make you able to walk into court and make judges fear you. You don't even have to have a JD degree. So tell us about your course, because really the biggest problem, I think, in our society is people don't get at what the real issues are, do they?
Well, I think they know what the issues are. I don't think they know how to resolve the issues.
Yeah, that's what I meant. In other words, they don't get at the business end of what the problem is in terms of how to actually fix it. When you actually provide them tools and say, look, here's a legal toolkit. If you use this, you can resolve all kinds of situations or that go on for decades, like the pro-life issue.
As you said a couple of weeks ago, I've got this huge pus bag on my leg. I mean, it's huge. It makes me walk funny. That's the issue.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so how do I solve the issue? And this is what, in other words, when I come to you as a physician, you have certain tools, you have certain substances in jars and bottles and pills and so forth and so on, and you use your tools in these various liquids and powders and things to hopefully make my pus bag go away.
Right.
Okay, because you're a physician. Now, the way I see this, and I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time trying to sell the course today, although I hope people will have the good sense to get the course, because it's silly not to have it.
Right.
But the people do not understand government. I mean, many people don't understand that their state has a constitution, and the federal government has a constitution, and the federal government's constitution is a limitation on powers. Supposed to be, used to be, ought to be. But the people don't know this because they don't teach this in high school. They teach this in law school, and you don't find out about it because the lawyers don't want you to know about it, even though I've been a lawyer 30 years. The legal profession doesn't want you to know. The executive branch is supposed to execute the law. They're supposed to make it happen. The legislative branch is supposed to make the law. And the judicial branch is supposed to interpret the law as it is written. Interpret it, not make it, interpret it. Not sit back and pontificate about how the world ought to be or what they think people ought to do, but to interpret the law as it is written, including the Constitution and the statutory authority that's created by the legislature and the administrative rulings that are established by the executive branch. This is how the government works. 99.999999% of your listeners, bless their hearts, I love them, I want to help them, they don't have a clue. So when Scalia goes off and starts talking about silly pudding or whatever, nicky-nacky or whatever it was that he was talking about, I just want to get up and applaud. I just want to go find the guy and give him a big kiss on the cheek. You know, buy him something great and celebrate because what he's saying. I don't agree with everything about the man, but what he's saying is 100% correct. These recent rulings go outside the scope of juridical rulings. The judges are supposed to be constrained to do their job. If I bring my pus bag into you and you're my physician, and you say, well, just a moment, and you go outside and tune the carburetor on my automobile, that's not what I came to you for. That's not your job. Your job is to fix my pus bag. And the judicial branch's job is to interpret the law as it is written, not to try to guess what public policy might be or any of those types of things, which they are doing and have been doing for, I don't know, probably at least 60 or 70 years is when it all began. Really, right. It did. That's Eisenstadt versus Baird, a case out of Massachusetts, which had to do with birth control. And the state of Massachusetts wanted to limit people's right to use birth control. And how on God's green earth the Supreme Court pulled out of that individuals that the Constitution protects their individual rights for privacy is beyond me. And the people did nothing.
Yeah. Amazing.
So that's
now, stay right there, Dr. Fred. We're going to continue with this discussion. I think it's, as we approach the 4th of July, we want to understand this is the central point of the operation of government is the rule of law. And welcome back. Dr. Fred, I try to use all kinds of tactics with our listeners. So I try to entertain them. I try to upset them. I try to make them know that they're loved. I try to kind of lead them along like a good shepherd with the stick and with the, the calls that the sheep know. And, basically, Jesus said, to Peter and to all the apostles, feed my sheep. He says to all the Christians. We have a Christian nation where people are basically sheep. And they unfortunately are going along with things where they're in trouble. Maybe they're walking on rocky ground or their feet are stuck in mud. And really what's happening is a lot of the problems are pretty straightforward to extricate them. For example, if we were to force, for example, us to get out of what's called the state of emergency since 1933 that we have, which is a non-war state of emergency, a lot of the executive orders the president would have would be null and void. And even Chris Christie said, well, the first thing he's going to do if he's president is go with a panel of lawyers and go through systematically and remove all the overreach of executive orders. Well, first off, those all come out of an emergency state. Things like pro-life issues. I hear all these pro-life groups wringing their hands decade after decade trying to get candidates elected that are pro-life. And the real issue isn't the politicians not going to change it. It's going to be in the courts where you decide issues like what personhood is and what a person is. First off, when I talk to people who are pro-abortion, and again, nobody in their right mind will debate me on abortion. That's a fact. I've been doing now for 25, almost 30 years. No one in the right mind. And the reason is because I will pull apart the issue and I'll see on the legal side as well as the medical and technical side. It's not genetically, say the mother. It's a different genetic person. That it has a different ontogeny. That it has legal rights. So that if you kill a mother and a baby, you can actually be charged with 2 murders. One of the big problems in the Canadian courts is they have both legal abortion, but if you kill a mother, and this happened in the province of Alberta and other provinces across the country over the years, you can pull up the legal records. Same way here in America. if you kill a mother that's pregnant, whether she's 6 weeks pregnant or 6 months, you have killed 2 persons, not 1. Or 3 if there's twins, for example. And the problem is, that once you have the right of inheritorship, you got a real legal quandary here to say it's okay to kill someone that legally has the right to property. It's a big deal, isn't it?
Well, it never should have happened in the first place.
Right.
And if you'd ask some of these pro-abortion people, come with me down to the clinic, come on over to the hospital with me, and watch while we pull the baby almost out of the mother. We'll bring out the feet, we'll bring out the body, its little butt, its little rump, its little back, its hands and feet, its arms, and then what we'll do is we'll stick a suction thing in its spine and we'll suck its brain out, and then we'll throw it in a black trash can. Come see it, and then tell me you think it's okay.
Yeah, or try to use kind of convoluted logic to tell me that it's the brother's right to murder. Now, I'll tell you what, people, the pubic arch is not a magical arch where suddenly you become a human being. And suddenly, if the head is not pulled out past that magical arch, you're not a human being yet, so you can suck the brains out and kill them. It's a pile of crap, okay? And as a surgeon, I can tell people...
American people are getting sucked in, my brother.
Okay,
they're going to continue to get sucked in as long as they're waiting on somebody to ride up on a white horse and fix it for them. It's up to the American people to fix it for themselves. They have to become legally literate, whether they want to or not, or else they are cheating their children, and it's not fair to cheat their children. They all talk about, I want a better life for my children. What a bunch of bull. If they really want a better life for their children, they would learn how this government is supposed to work, and they would get involved politically and force it to work that way. They'd get their churches out of the 501c3 and get their churches organized as trusts, and they'd start getting involved in politics.
Right. In fact, I think, to be honest with you, half the church time should not be spent. It should start off with praising God, and then the last half of the service should be how can we get out in the community and become salt and light. And that's to me. That's what to me, and it means legal salt and legal light and medical light. In other words, people don't have health care. Why don't we have medical cooperatives where we take care of each other? Obamacare is an abomination. The fact that the Supreme Court said it's both a tax and it's a right. They didn't control costs, and now people can't afford the deductibles. We talked about this last hour with Harley Schlanger. What happens is people even have it, can't use it because the deductibles are so high or their copays are so high they can't use it.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we, you and I maybe agree, at least in part, we lay the axe to the root of the tree, okay?
Right.
Jesus said, he said we're supposed to be salt and light, but what if the salt loses its saltiness? Wherewith shall the world be salted? That's what he says. Those are his words. Wherewith shall the world be salted if we lose our saltiness? And instead of having actual people coming together who love Jesus and love God and fear God and want to make the world a better place, they're all hiding within the 501c3 so they can save 20 cents on a dollar that they throw in the plate. Well, shame on these people. Oh, my God.
Well, what I have to say to them is being a Christian is not a noun, it's a verb. There's a Hebrew word meaning shema, to hear and do, and I believe that one of the reasons why one of the most stable periods in ancient Israeli history is the rule of the time of judges before they call for King Saul. Yes. And God warned them against having a king. He said, you want judges because...
don't have it. He said,
don't have a king. And it became a plague on them. This King Saul brought them into destruction.
Isn't that right? He said, you'll be sorry.
Right, and he warned them the same way. I'm going to warn women. I gave
the best of your women. He'll take the best of your sons. You're going to be sorry. You don't want a king. Don't have a king.
Well, the United Nations.
To have one.
Dr. Fred, the United Nations has 32 different designations for different sexual orientations, etc., combinations.
Oh my God!
And I call it the Bruce generation, Jenner. Now, I don't care if this man has been harmed by his mother's hormones or xenoestrogens or traumatically changed or emotionally traumatized by being assaulted by his relatives or friends or priests or whatever. It doesn't matter how he's messed up. We should love the person, and he's probably a great person in some ways, but you can't change. I like the comment by I don't agree with everything that Chris Christie says, but he said, I don't condemn the person, say, he's a hellion, but I have to tell people, when I went to medical school, these things were considered mental illnesses. They are. And if I was to scan his brain, I'd say, oh, okay, this guy's brain is messed up because of the number of biotoxins in the environment. But you don't change the definition of marriage, which, by the way, the Defense of Marriage Act is there, or the states' rights. It says in the Constitution that any rights not given to the federal government go back to the states. So where does the Supreme Court get off reascribing rights and saying, look, the states don't have a right to ban, quote, gay marriage? First off, it can't be marriage unless their intention is to have a surrogate mother or genetically engineer an artificial uterus. And in fact, about a dozen plus years ago in Israel, in a conference in Haifa, the Rabbinical Council, remember now, these rabbis are Sabbatean Satanists. They actually met and said it's okay for gay couples, because remember, Israel is a very pro-gay country. They said that they can pass on their lineal descendants to their genetically engineered clone of themselves when that technology becomes available. And it's not far off. Which means you can clone yourself and hand off your descendant to your descendant. And of course, what they want to do is people like Ray Kurzweil is download your consciousness and pass it into the next biological unit that is a clone of yourself.
Good luck.
Right? This is hell. I mean, yeah, this is so evil. And the problem is, you see, these women don't understand. I presented a paper in 1992 to the Royal Commission on Reproductive Technology. I gave two papers. One was on fetal tissue transplantation and to do the treatment for Parkinson's disease. Remember that Michael, the actor in Hollywood, and to do a diencephalon transplant of the cells that actually create the particular neurotransmitter. Michael J. Fox. It takes 20 babies to just do one side of one brain. And it acts like a tumor. In fact, those cells can later grow teeth and hair and all kinds of things in the brain. It will cause intracranial hypertension, as they actually cause you to cone your brain through your foramen magnum when you die, a horrifying death. So they act like tumors. But they were doing this craziness, and I was there writing papers against this and other fetal tissue transplantations, and against the super soldier program, which I know about, has been going on in our government and DARPA for decades, going back to 1947. And I said about these today, Dr. Fred, your course, let's talk about the course for a minute. I think people need to understand the various parts of it and how amazing this is. You can do it on your iPad, your computer, your iPhone, and believe me, once you become legally tuned up, you start to understand the operation. You start to learn the operation of the law, that whether it's the legislative branch or the president, they're all restrained by the law. And if the law is put in place, whether or not it's Glass-Steagall or other laws, things can be set right. Whether it's Obamacare, or international foreign policy, or the control of costs of healthcare, or pro-life. For example, most people aren't aware that Obamacare guarantees eugenics. It's basically Nazi eugenicide. And people say, no, Dr. Deagle. I say, well, let's put it this way. They say certain people of certain ages do not qualify for, say, a clipped aneurysm in their brain. The ethics committee is going to meet on Tuesday. They're 72. They don't qualify, or they don't even qualify for what I call conventional toxic chemotherapy. It's got to go to a committee before it gets approved. And people don't understand how serious this is.
Dr. Bill, let me stop you a moment, okay? Because you're a great talker, and I love you to death. But let me just talk for just a minute. Is there anybody out there listening to you who might love God, who might love Jesus? Is there a single soul out there that actually might care? That might, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now, if there are any of those people out there who actually care, then why is it that we have people in this country who are doing absolutely nothing with their churches except patting themselves on the back and making believe that they're Christians and because they got baptized or whatever, when we've got a nation out here who is dying, children are hiding from their father, they're crying themselves to sleep at night, or they're being murdered, and churches are being set fire to, and people are being killed because they're the wrong color, and that people are hiding in their churches like storks sticking their head in the sand. Right. And it's time that they realize there is a course out there. Yes, I'll sell it. Okay, it's called HowToWinInCourt.com. How to Win in Court. Hello, America. If you really love your children, Learn how the courts work. It's a game. It's a process. It's easy to learn. Anybody can learn it. Absolutely anyone with half a brain can learn how to go into court and get justice and set things right again. But if you sit around telling me you love Jesus and you don't want to learn how to control what's going on around you, then don't tell me you love Jesus, because he loved Jesus. And I remember one thing that he said, and you almost hit on it a moment ago, when he, at the very end, he said, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I would have gathered you together as a mother hen gathers her chicks. But you refused." And that's where we are today. We got people out there claiming to be Christians, and they're just like the people of Jerusalem. And he said, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I would have gathered you together as a mother hen gathers her chicks." Can you just imagine how he must have just ached? The ache is unthinkable that he went through. But you refused. You wouldn't let me gather you together. And here we are over 2,000 years later, and we still won't let him gather us together. It's got to happen. It needs to happen now.
Well, we could actually have...
the problem is for Christians to stand up and Christians to get out from under the 501c3 and get involved in getting people elected and get involved in government and stop the stupid make-believe that we're not supposed to be involved in government. Whoever made that up? That's not in the Bible. I read it cover to cover.
Yeah. Now, the key issue is we can almost make it kind of like a task list for the church to do. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to put up a task list up on Nutrimedical and clayandiron.com. And that task list would say, here are the issues, whether it's here in America or Britain or in other countries. Make a task list of what your church can do. And in fact, whether it's in your community, your nation, or worldwide, what can we do to, for example, to bring industry and energy? For example, we're talking about projects with Professor McCanny, who will be on the next hour. What can we do legally? How can we modernize financial systems so that the nations can thrive without debt? How can we fix things like Deagle so that the speculative banking is gone so they don't blow up economies? And all of this comes right back to the rule of law. It's amazing to me. It's almost like, you see, I do what's called functional medicine. And my professors, because I had a PhD in biochemistry before I went into medicine back in 73, in marine bacteriology, internal and physics, they wanted me to go into pathology. I said, no, I want to deal with living patients. And as time went on, the science of functional medicine, which is what you're doing on the legal side, is how living systems work. In other words, what's the biology, intermediate metabolism, plasma physics, etc. And what you've done on the legal side is you provided the tools to tell people this is how the legal body of a nation or a people or a system works, so you don't have chaos. Chaos
That's
means
right.
War and other things, and again, even the party fighting. For example, Obama is doing something illegal, and the Republicans are so corrupt they're actually supporting Obama to the shock of many Democrats. Now, that wouldn't happen if the rule...
Right. Let me make just 2 points then. Two things for people to remember, okay?
Right.
How to win in court is one word. How to win in court.com. That's one thing. We'll put that in your mind, people. How to win in court.com. If you don't do anything else, come take the free quiz. There's a free quiz. Don't worry about it.
I have a link directly up on the front page of NutriMedical.com that shows the direct link, so we'll get credit for those course purchases. So I prefer people go through that link.
Or they can use the pull-down menu when they order, and they can pick out Dr. Deagle. Not a problem. Now, the other thing is, next time you go to a church business meeting, tell them you want to reorganize as a trust. As a common law trust. You can still have a bank account. You can still own property. If you want to pay your preacher, you can still pay your preacher. You can still have an organist, and you can pay her to play the organ. You can still do everything that you do now, but you will be a trust and not a 501c3, and you can promote the candidacy of individuals for public office, and you can try to influence legislation at the legislature and at Congress. You can do these things if you will get out from under this cursed thing called a 501c3. You don't need it, people. God says, come out from among them. That's in your Bible. Come out from among them. Organize as a trust. Go to howtowinincourt.com. Learn how to do the law. Learn how to use the courts to get what you want in your community and in your schools and in your church. And then Get out from under the 501c3. Get a lawyer if you don't know how to do it, or go to my website, which is PhiladelphiaMissions.com or thegospelmystery.com. And there's a trust there you can use as an example, or you can call me. I've got a toll-free number on howtowinincourt.com. Please give me a call. I will show you how to do this. Organize your churches as a trust and get involved. Get the How to Win in Court course, howtowinincourt.com, and get involved, organized as a trust, take all the money, bring all the money into the storehouse, like Malachi says, and get involved in government. Fix our government. If the Christians don't fix the government, we're all screwed. And that's just the way it is. Jesus said, if the salt has lost its saltiness, wherewith will the world be salted? The world is certainly in need of salt, and it doesn't have any salt because you people out there who have been duped into joining 501c3 corporations that call themselves churches aren't doing anything that really matters. Maybe you're doing this and that. Maybe you got a church supper. You got a little cooking thing, and you bring in the homeless and all that, and that's wonderful. But in the long run, you're not making much of a difference. You're not making nearly the difference you can when every church in this entire country organizes as a trust and gets involved and says, we've had enough. We're not taking it anymore. We're taking our country back. We are going to restore our country according to the rule of law and due process, and we're getting rid of the 501c3, and we're organizing as common law trusts.
Right. So, and again, if they take your course, you'll show them how to organize a common law trust so they can start having a voice. See, God wants His church to have a voice and have actions, because Christians need to be salt and light, and they need to be a change agent toward righteousness in our nation and repentance. That's the issue of repentance. In fact, I want to say something important. You're the chief leader, what I call legal repentance, which is the most important for the body of a nation to not bring down judgment, is legal repentance of the people that call themselves Christians in this country.
Oh, bless your heart.
I appreciate it. Again, that's an important message for the 4th of July coming up. That's the real heart of it. If you want to have many more 4th of Julys and probably be proud of your country, we need to be change agents for